This topic was an interesting one. I came very close to talking about the topic of grief. I've been learning a lot about grief over the last year plus, and there's parts of our story that tie in with grief, but James and I were like, that is just way too heavy. It's just like, let's keep this a little bit lighter. And when I started this, I really let the pictures tell me what I was going to say. I went through our year of pictures and just pulled out things that jumped out at me and made me think about things that were important that I wanted to share. And then the whole lesson just kind of came along with the pictures. I don't know how to describe it. When people have asked me, how are things or how's it going or whatever, I have been honest and told them that this time, 8 months after being on a field like this, it's a very vulnerable time. And I hope that I can explain that to you as we get into this. I have been a part of a 2-year mission with Adventures in Missions, and during that time you kind of get to experience all 4 stages of culture shock, maybe not as long in the 4th stage as maybe you'd hope to. I know I've been a part of short-term missions as well, and that's usually gets to experience that 1st stage, maybe a little bit of the 2nd. But this is going to talk about all 4 stages of culture shock. Some of you have experienced culture shock. Some of you have read about it or know about it. I'm hoping that I can, as sharing my story here, that I will be telling you about what's going on in our life at the same time that we're talking about these stages. So let's see how this works. So in October 2022, our family left our home, our family and friends, and the life we knew, with 11 suitcases, a bunch of carry-ons, and began our journey to Albania to work for God there. And I put the verse, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me," Isaiah 6:8. This picture is a very emotional picture for me. There were other people there who were loving us so hard, who had just helped us put all of our life into these suitcases and weighed them and balanced them and strapped them and loaded them. And this was the last moment before when we walked away from our home and everything else that we owned. We would get to our car for the last time. We would drive away from our house for the last time. And we were saying goodbye to a life that we had known there for 11 years. This is where some of the grief stuff comes in, but we're not talking about grief today. Some of us had just been crying, when this picture was taken, but it was a really important picture, and I'm so glad we captured it, because it was a moment we needed to remember. When we arrived in Albania, we were met at the airport by a sweet American missionary couple who gave our children gifts of welcome, and we were driven to our temporary apartment across the street from the city center. This was our first temporary Airbnb. Those 11 suitcases made it. All of them did, miraculously. There was even a trip in the middle where we were running around Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And Carrie, her dad, Johnson, met us at the airport and somehow managed to fit all 11 of these suitcases and our carry-ons and us in his Suburban. It was this massive thing. And then they drove it to his house, and he kept it for us so we could travel around a little bit later, which was such a blessing. And this verse came to mind. Anyone who's left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. And this verse gave me a lot of comfort when I was packing up and giving away and letting go of our life. And it has been true. God has taken care of us. And it's really cool to watch that happen. Getting into culture shock, I just realized at 1 a.m. when I was like, okay, I'm done, that it's this honey mood period. I don't think it was written by an English speaker, and I don't know how old it is. And this is a really nice, beautiful graph. And life is never a nice, beautiful graph. It is always like up and down and jaggeds and peaks and valleys. But this is a general idea of a culture shock curve. When you get to a new field or a new place, you have a honeymoon period. And that's right there at the top. You walk and you're like, oh, this is really cool. And you have this honeymoon period. Down here you can see the months that are being in a foreign country, and that's kind of important when I say this. We're kind of at a vulnerable place right now. So the first month, 2 months, 3 months is a really cool time to be in a foreign field. At the beginning of a new time in a foreign country, everything's fresh and new and interesting. Here are kids literally on a carousel. A carousel is the middle of Skanderbeg Square, which is the square in the middle of the biggest city in Tirana. It was kind of like this, like everything was new and fresh and exciting and fun to try out. These are kids in the church basement at the Tirana Church of Christ. All of these kids are kids of Christians, and they are, everybody was really welcoming. And we read into things, just positivity wherever we went. The food tastes delicious. These are 3 completely different situations. They have amazing coffee shops just about everywhere you go for pretty cheap. Delicious ice cream and gelato. Claire's got in front of her one of her favorite dishes in all of Albania, and it's only this one restaurant, and it's pears and cheese wrapped in prosciutto, with like a glaze of a sweet glaze over top. It's delicious. It's fun to explore and try new things. You can see the carousel in the background. There's this cool jumping thing. They attach like these bungee cords, and anyway. Inconveniences are quirky and interesting. The first time we got into our apartment, I was like, wait a second, all the settings on the washing machine are in German. Like, how do I operate this thing? I was like, that's so funny, And then, okay, now I've got all these clothes. How do I get them to be dry? Because there's no dryer. And so thus began my journey of discovering how to do something very, very simple, like getting my clothes clean. I thought this was kind of pretty. This is actually in Berat, Albania, where we live, and that's Timor, the mountain behind it. In fact, like our apartment now is like right there. But that was one of the Airbnbs we were staying at. Highlights from the honeymoon stage. This is an elevator. My kids were obsessed with the elevator button. They all wanted to get in and they wanted to push that elevator button first. Now they've been in so many elevators they don't care anymore. Lydia very briefly went through a time where she was scared of elevators and wouldn't be on one unless somebody else was on one with her. But I think we've gotten past that. We tried melon gelato, and we call it gelato. It's very much the gelato texture. They have their own word for ice cream. And kiwi gelato is really, really good. There are cones. You get a cone in Berat for 50 cents. Gideon woke me up in the middle of the night and said, I think I have culture shock. I'm like, it's called jet lag, kiddo. Like our body clocks were all messed up. I was more prepared coming back. I laid out snacks and his tablet, in a blanket. I'm like, don't wake anyone that's sleeping. Just eat your snacks if you're hungry. Claire found and made a habitat for a pet snail. Lydia's here. Hi, Lyd. We celebrated holiday traditions in a new country. We celebrated Christmas with the church there. They don't really celebrate Christmas as a holiday because it's religious. And so the Albanians celebrate New Year's. So the Christians celebrate Christmas as a church family. And it's kind of like, this is our family holiday. And we're going to do this because we all love God. And it changes it somehow. It was really cool to be there. But everything else was operating as normal. So weird to walk down the street on Christmas Day, and I actually went in and paid for my cell phones on Christmas Day, and it just felt bizarre.
I just wanted to, because I don't know if that connection made the Albanians as a whole, as a people, don't celebrate.
Yeah, Albanians don't celebrate Christmas. They have Santa Clauses. Yeah, they have Santa Claus and Christmas trees, but they don't celebrate Christmas Day at all. They celebrate a gift-giving type holiday on New Year's, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, I take it for granted because of living in Russia. They did the similar thing there as well. We made a lot of new friends. James and would take a kid and they would go explore Tirana for hours, and they would walk for miles and miles. Tirana being the capital city of Albania. And always discovering new things. They'd come home one day and be like, look what I found. And we've tried all kinds of cool, interesting things. And so it was, not to say that there weren't very hard days. There was times that we were grieving. There are times that I felt like, we leaving had made this big bloody wound, and I was constantly like checking it like once in a while to see, okay, how does it feel now? Okay, it still hurts. Okay, how does it feel now? And eventually the wound scabbed over, and then slowly it kind of became a bruise. And then every once in a while I'd poke it and be like, how do I feel if I do this? Just with thinking about things we had left behind or things that were changed, waking up in a panic and being like, why did I get rid of my house? Why is my house gone? Why don't I have a house anymore? And having to kind of mentally work through that. I was in Texas. We went down there to go to the mission forum, and we had left in such a crazy hurry that I was like, there's clothes in the dryer. And I had, the night before we'd flown out, put clothes in the washer and the dryer to pack and take to Albania with us, and then completely forgotten them in the dryer. So like I had half of an outfit and half of a pajama set and just random items, and our sweet family took care of a lot of that craziness. But there was just a lot of those moments where we'd have these sharp pains, and it would be hard. Also, walking around a big city for hours and hours and hours is exhausting. And being in a culture that you don't understand is exhausting. And there were times when every one of us wished that we were, we could press pause and just go back to normal life for a bit. The next stage is culture shock. There's other terms for it too, but this is really what it is. So as you can see, after a period of a honeymoon period, you begin to realize that everything is not perfect. The beautiful new things you saw at the beginning begin to become normal, and you begin to notice things that aren't all amazing. So this picture, sweet picture of my kids, this is in Berat. This is like an old field behind them, a sports field. This is the full picture if you back up. And you can see that there's a lot of litter on the ground. Littering is something that is really frustrating, because you'll walk down these beautiful, beautiful streets and parks and sidewalks, and you'll just watch people throw their trash on the ground. Even my kids walking with their Christian friends, because there's nothing telling them not to do that. Nobody told them not to. They've watched kids throw bottles into the river, and they've watched people just drop trash wherever they are, and they don't think anything of it. And so you end up with stuff like this. On the side of the road, there were construction workers, and there was a bush full of trash where they'd thrown all their lunch, wrappings and stuff. There's just no conscious idea of like, this is ours and we're going to take care of it, and it's hard. Some of our family's cultural struggles are littering. Don't look lit. Driving car safety. There's no car seats, and little kids nobody wears a car seat, seat belt. Stray animals have been a really big one. My kids love animals, and they're very kind and compassionate and loving towards them and protecting them. You'll see carcasses of animals hanging in shop windows. You'll go to the grocery store, and right next to the ice cream in the freezer, there'll be a pile of goat heads, all wrapped in cellophane with eyeballs and tongues and the whole deal, Being stared at. When we moved to this much smaller community, people stopped and just turned and watched us. I used in Tirana, the much bigger city, we'd go to the coffee shops all the time. Nobody paid us any attention. James and I tried to go to a coffee shop to talk, or talk mission work or couple stuff or whatever. Everybody in the room, every old man will turn their chair and just point towards us and watch us the whole time. And it's very disconcerting, and it's just not fun. Now, they're not predatory, they're not mean. We're just like circus freaks that just kind of wandered into town and are like, what are they going to do today? It's weird. I think the solution to this is time. The longer we're there, the more boring we'll be to them. So I'm hoping this wears off, but it's already gotten some better, but that's just something we live with every day. You walk down the street and everybody stares at you. Struggles to communicate or be understood or go deep with people. Wonderful Christian people. We have made really, really close friends. And there are times that they do not understand us at all. Like, they just cannot get what we're feeling on a fundamental level. We can't communicate either because of communication or because of background. There's a lot of people who we want to really go deep with scripturally. James is teaching the teens, and he's always had a passion for that. But they only understand things on a very superficial level, both because of their length of time around Christians and in the church, and because of communication. And that can be a frustration. Smells, I just added that one. There are some days when I'm like, I just want to wear like a mask of perfume or something, because sometimes it's stinky. You take out all the stray animals, and you take all the smells and or all the exhaust from the cars and stuff, and it's just not pretty, it's just stinky. I liked this one. I know I sound like I'm 3, but I'm actually an adult in my native language. Now, I don't sound like I'm 3 yet. I'm still like grunting out short words. But yeah, this is life, and it can be hard because in any given situation that you're dealing with somebody, they assume that we're the idiots every time. You're the foreigner, you don't know. And honestly, it really gives me a deep compassion for people on this side. When people are talking to you in broken English, you know that they have had to cross a huge barrier to get to that point, and it's just be patient and compassionate the way you'd want someone to treat you, I guess. Animals. It has been really, really hard to see the way the animals are treated. And these pictures the animals are okay. That one actually is tagged in Toronto, so somebody's actually watching it. Most of them breed and live in collections by like trash cans, and where they dig out their food. A lot of them will have scars from fights with each other. They will die because they're hit by cars. They're constantly just roaming the roads. Nobody's done anything to stop the population, so they just keep having puppies or kittens. Sometimes at night you can just hear them like roving and growling and barking, and it's just hard. It's hard for my kids. There's sometimes when like they just come to me and they just like bury their head in my chest and just like hold me, because they care about things like this, and there's nothing they can do about it, and that can be really hard. This one cracked me up. Lydia's got an Easter egg and she wrote "help me" on it. I think she was joking, but it's challenging to go through culture shock. Sometimes we feel moody, sad, angry, depressed, and it can be accident prone or forgetful. And then if you're going through it a family and everyone in your family is dealing with something the same day, it can be very hard to be the adult and handle all that when you're feeling that way. And it can be really challenging and lonely. Many people ask us if we were surprised by the hard things we experienced in Albania. Mostly, no, we expected these things. But it doesn't mean that there aren't days when we don't feel like doing another hard thing. This is the church building. That's the courtyard out front. Clara is getting ready to serve drinks. Gideon's sitting on the hose that was used to fill or empty the baptistry. I can't remember which. All the floors are tile. The doorknob's in the middle of the door. Just random things. Actually, that door is annoying because it's a church door. It's the church building door. And if it's closed, nobody can open it. It has to be cracked open for people to walk in, or you have to open it from the inside. Like, that is a terrible design for a church, but we just got what we got. I miss my AIM days when someone else handled bureaucracy. There have been weeks of our time in Albania when just doing paperwork or going from one office to another constituted a part or even a full-time job. Just paying the water bill has taken us hours. We've also been working on getting legal residency in Albania. We've gone from office to office to office, notary to notary to notary, and they tell us one thing, and they're like, oh, no, that was wrong. You had to do something else. Oh, you got to turn this paperwork in. This is the American embassy. We had to work with them, and you're like, oh, good, America. No, it's bureaucracy too, and you have to deal with their stuff as well. I didn't know about posting this one. This is one of the hardest parts, I think, for us of culture shock. We love Albanians, but Albanians are people too. And there are times when strangers take advantage of us. There are squabbles in the church among Christians. There are times we see the root of habits or cultural practices that appear problematic in the youth or church, and it hurts our heart, especially hard when coming off the honeymoon euphoria. We went to the Albanian Christian retreat. We were super excited to be encouraged and be with everyone, and we saw the youth spending a lot of time. This is not the only thing they're doing. They're kind of just being teens here looking at their phone during the lesson. But there were some things that we saw and that were very discouraging. And when you're coming off that honeymoon phase and you're watching things that you know are systematic problems that we really can't control, it can be very painful. In culture shock, things appear more extreme than the negative, but since we're still very new, we're trying to process information with only a part of the whole picture. We know just enough to be a danger to our own hearts. So we can see the bad stuff, but we don't know why it's there. We can't see the full picture, and that's why culture shock can be difficult. This is a very typical architecture there. Everything's made out of concrete. There's not a lot of safety railings. There's a lot of buildings that are like this, rebar. Sometimes you look over and like, oh, there's an abandoned building, and then you'll realize there's laundry waving. Like, nope, people are living in that. That is typical. Next set is adjustment. So we have been on the field for 18 months now. 8 months, whatever. I'm putting for 8 and saying 18. 8 months now, that's the point where we came home. So if you can see that we have been there about the time that traditionally or typically is the most difficult time for culture shock. This can be really hard for families. This can be the place where a lot of people are ready to just give up and go home. I mean, this is hard. And then we come back to where everything feels normal and easy, and you can speak the language, and you can order the food you like, and you can buy the things at the grocery store you want. And it's just like, oh yeah, I remember this. I just was here. There's a little part of me, I almost didn't come to the wedding because I knew that this would be a very difficult time to get back on an airplane and fly back. We haven't made all of our adjustments yet, but that's the next stage, the adjustment stage. So here's a picture of Lydia on our balcony wearing a hat and an umbrella, and it cracked me up because it is pouring rain. It is just like the rain is coming down so hard, and they were playing with it and having fun with it, and Claire was taking a picture of Lydia. This is kind of what the adjustment stage looks like. And obviously, like I said, it's not all linear. There are ups and downs, and there's all kinds of things that happen. There were, really, really bad days during the honeymoon stage, and there were really, really fantastic days and times during the culture shock stage. Laundry. I put a post on Facebook saying, I need an Albanian mama to tell me how to do laundry. I know how to do laundry, but it's just, how do you handle sheets when your lines are like that far off the ground? Like, how do you get things done in time? Through the winter, it was hard to get things warm enough to dry, and I was like cozying my hanging rack right up to the heater. Like, please just warm these things so I can have pants to wear for my family to wear tomorrow. But we began working on solutions to our problems. We began to create new habits and find new comforts. This is our apartment. The kids really, really, really wanted the chair, and it's only out during the summer season, so we got the chair. And I think that little bit of swaying, rocking, and has been really good. There's always somebody in it. It's very self-regulating. It's just very much a comfort, and every time we have company over, there's somebody in the chair. It will be probably the most used piece of furniture we have in our house. We find new ways of coping and recovering from disappointments or bad days. Gideon discovered a cupboard in the kitchen that was almost empty, so he finished it out for me, and he made a little nest. And now he's got a little place to go and retreat. Here's Lydia playing her heart out at a park. There's not a lot of parks in Berat. This is in Tirana, but they're a lot of fun. We start to mesh the idealism and the pessimism into a more realistic understanding that resembles truth better. It is not all bad in Albania. It is not all bad. It is not all rainbows and butterflies either. There's something in the middle, just like life. It is a place where people live. It is a normal life. I had the opportunity to talk at an Albanian ladies retreat, and the question was, who am I? These are some of the ladies there. My answer was, I'm a foreigner. So I went to scripture, and I was told I had a Devo, so I was trying to put together this little scripture. And I realized that God called many of his peoples to be foreigners in a strange land. So many. Like he called Abraham out, and then he called Jacob away from his family, and Joseph, and Moses, and Esther, and Ruth, and Daniel, and even Jesus was a foreigner. His family had to go flee to Egypt. And not to mention, Jesus himself left heaven to come to earth, which is much more extreme. And then we've got Paul and Christians who were sent out of their home areas all over the world. And I was like, what is this pattern? Why does God call people out of their home to go do things? Like, what is the purpose of this? This is my slide in Albanian. I just wanted to share it because James helped me put it together. These are the scriptures that we referenced. The word foreigner and stranger are the same word. So in Albania, if you're strange, you've got to be from another place. We know everybody in this town kind of thing. Why does God call so many people to be foreigners? It creates a stronger dependence on God. You know, when you're falling and you're free falling and you're out there, you're praying. And we have seen God come through and answer so many prayers to create a real longing for our true home, heaven. And this was my conclusion with the ladies, is that we are all foreigners on this earth. And we all do better to have that sense of not quite belonging here, because our true home is heaven and our true family is God's family. And if we don't have that little bit of uncomfortableness, we may never feel the need to become part of God's family. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It humbles us and it helps us see our place in this world. It helps us love strangers better. When you have been there and you've walked that path as a stranger, you are so much more compassionate to others. Helps us love our family, our true family better, our Christian brothers and sisters. And it helps us love Jesus better. I mean, he literally, they ask him, when did we see you as a stranger and take you in? And he said, when you did it to one of these, you did it for me. This scripture we found, and it just has really blessed my heart. Hebrews 11, the people of faith. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things that promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they're looking for a country of their own. If they'd been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had an opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. And this is all of us. We are all called to a heavenly country. We are all on our way to a better place. We have all left. When we chose God in baptism, we have all left our old country. And we could return to that way of life if we wanted to, but we are striving on towards heaven. And then we are all foreigners because in Christ we are all citizens of a heavenly kingdom. So that was my little aside. That was my lesson from the ladies' retreat with a few more scriptures thrown in. Back to this, the adjustment stage, the adaptation stage. Now we are not in the adaptation phase yet. This phase begins after 12 to 24 months, depending on many factors, language and culture and all that kind of thing. This phase begins in most of the life's processes that you set up in your world have been adapted to daily life. You know how to use the grocery store, you know how to drive around, you can handle conversations, you can handle situations, you understand what to expect and things. Pretty much you have kind of your mind and mental processes have accepted it and you've learned how to handle it. Adapted people can maneuver around their new culture much more smoothly, but it does not mean that they're accepted as a native in that culture. You can still be the outsider, even when you have lived there many, many, many years. Our goals for the adaptation phase. This is a picture I love. This couple here, Chimi and Anila, are the couple that we are working with in Albania. I absolutely love their hearts. Just golden, hardworking, sacrificial. I mean, the kingdom of God is their number one priority. Good people. Anila has actively done things to help my girls become more acclimated and bring them into her ministries. Chimmy is very humble and very willing to, they're not argumentative, they're peacemakers in our church. Just fantastic people. We went to the church retreat and we put together, the Americans put together like a little Bible study for the kids. We had it translated. Our friend Lisa created a armor of God that kind of fit the more Ottoman style from the traditional style for the Albanians. So Gideon's the sword is got the scimitar look, and he's got the helmet that kind of more looks like the helmet. So they were doing the armor of God. They just stood up and did a presentation, and they stopped in to take a picture. And I just love the delight on their faces, because it reflects back to my children that they are seen, that they are loved, that they are appreciated. In our adaptation phase, we hope to have regular connection to friends who will feed our souls and encourage our children. We hope to be of greater service to God and his people. This is a woman from our congregation. In addition to preaching, to teaching adult classes, teaching teen classes, hosting teen activities, participating in service to the church and community, helping facilitate participation in events. You guys have helped with that too. You guys have contributed so that our church members can attend events. Benevolence and fundraising for those events. We want to begin teaching kids classes, teaching one-on-one English Bible classes, taking more intensive language classes, visiting and encouraging other congregations, hosting people from the USA who can serve or encourage the church in Albania, and more as God shows us. And finally, how you can help, how you can be a part of this. Keep praying for us. We have a long way to go in becoming adapted and becoming understanding and growing. And we are right at the kind of the peak almost of the feeling of not quite belonging, things not quite being right, all that kind of stuff that you can really help with. Reach out to us. Find out how you can communicate with us and send a quick note, especially from your kids to our kids. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We are on WhatsApp. WhatsApp's really big there. It's a private communication. You're not being shared with anyone else. We can be on, what's the other one? Telegram. We have email. We even have an American phone number that's free to call. It's through Skype. So if you want to find a way to talk to my kids, if you think of us, if you think of, I wonder how they're doing, just send a little message. There's a man in this congregation who sends me reels. He watches on Instagrams that he thinks that might be funny or encouraging for us. And just that little bing of somebody is paying attention to you and sends it to us is just incredibly encouraging on a random whatever time of day, to know that somebody is paying attention. And our kids really need connection. I was really hoping that junior week would be a fantastic time for my girls. I was hoping to make real connections and be like, let's schedule and plan times for these girls to continue relationships with these other teen girls, and that's not going to be available. So if you have a child who's my kids' ages or have shared interests, I would love to connect with you and find a way to make it work. And consider helping with some of our needs on the field. So we live in a very impoverished area. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get things sent over there. We have to be really creative. We had a friend who came back to the States. She took a suitcase that we paid for with things that we were still in the process of moving. My parents had sent our stuff. They put it in a suitcase, and we paid for the suitcase to be brought over, and we had our stuff. We can do that kind of thing. If you want to help with kids classes, or we can talk about what might be ways that you can be a part of, actively involved in some of our needs. Every little bit helps. It really does. And we're going to be trying to keep the church pantry stocked for the people who really are starving in our congregation. They get like $100 a month to cover all their needs, and it's just not enough. Most of the people in our congregation are retired age, and they live on practically nothing. One of the reasons we're asking for help getting a heater, air conditioner in is because sometimes they showed up to church in the middle of winter in sandals, and they freeze in this concrete building all through services. So that's some of the ways that we're trying to help be a part of that. But we also are trying to be really careful to not just be like, oh, we can do that, it's in our bank account. We're very deliberate of like, this is coming from the church in America, and they are supporting you, and they love you, and they're to really kind of separate that out, because honestly, we haven't gotten all of our living needs quite met out yet anyway, and we would bleed ourselves dry very quickly if we did that. But also, we need to separate that out. I don't want to just be there as a piggy bank. I want to be there as a fellow worker. Yes.
For donations when you're not here, like is there like a Venmo or some kind of electrical way?
Yeah, we can get money because we're dealing with American bank accounts, and we can withdraw money there from our American bank account. So anything that can get to an American bank account works for us. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, all that works. If you want it to be tax deductible for giving purposes, it would need to come through the church. And so giving to the church with our name on it, not in the collection plate, to an actual missions deacon or elder, could get to us. It'll be a little slower. It wouldn't be as immediate. The church PayPal is problematic because Tanya, it is a big. It all goes into one big thing, and then somebody has to physically section it out. But it is doable. You might, if you do pay a fee. Okay, if you do give.
Support that goes through. If we put like right now we're putting like AIM. Does that get through? Like,
Yes, it does.
It just takes time.
It doesn't always take time, it's just one extra step, but there is a fee associated with that.
Are you also getting suitcases back this
We are.
that are like extra do you need suitcases?
Oh, that's really sweet. I think we might be doing okay on suitcases right now, but that's really kind. We brought a box, like a double-walled box from Home Depot last summer, and I was amazed. It did great all the way through. We still use that box. So in a pinch, we can use like a medium-sized shipping box, and might do that.
So Jason Gardner is the one that handles the mission stuff right now.
Yes.
And there's a folder in the office with his name for
Okay.
that.
That's good to know.
Best to put cash or check
Checks.
instead of church PayPal. But y'all have a personal PayPal.
We do, and so you can do friend to friend without fees.
Do y'all prefer receiving funds that way, or does it take?
It's really.
I understand. Like if someone says, yeah, we'll send this, but then if you don't have access to it for a month or something like that can be.
Thankfully, we have a little buffer right now, so it really it's what's easiest for you. So, and yes, PayPal would be great and instant, and I can tell you, yep, we see it, and all good. So, yeah.
Have you collected any of the 1,700 you need for the heater air conditioner thing?
James got a little bit handed to him on Wednesday, but no, not a lot of it. I think though that the elders are supportive. We just haven't decided the best way of handling that yet. Yes.
Not about money. When you said smells, the first thing that came to my mind is cigarette smoking, like the old days where we could smoke in the buildings wherever we want.
Okay, typically most restaurants, if the windows are open, people will smoke inside. If they're closed and it's winter, they'll tend to smoke on the patio. I think that might be a law or something. Which is nicer, but it's kind of hard to get away from it sometimes still. Our very first days in Albania, we sat down at an outside cafe, and the people next to us just smoking like chimneys. And I'm just like, oh, please, God, don't let my kids get secondhand smoke, poisoning because we came here. So we've kind of navigated that. We're just kind of more aware of, okay, there might be people smoking, and where are they, and we can move. I'm like, hold your breath, kids. We're walking through some smoke. Just breathe out slowly. But sometimes it's really bad and sometimes not. So anyway, thank you all for your interest and for paying attention and for your patience with us, and keep praying for us. That I don't know what it's going to be like getting on that plane with our kids, and I think all things are possible with God, and we have a home and an egg chair to sit in, and back there we have a car thanks to God's good gifts. So it's going to be okay, but we appreciate your prayers and your love. So thank you very much.